And that's the memo. Now for the top story tonight. One of the reasons that American workers and people all over the world are not making as much money as they should is crazy spending by some countries. In Cannes, France, the Economic Summit is trying to deal with Greece, which is about to go down the drain financially. Other entitlement states like Italy and Spain may be close behind. That causes the worldwide markets to panic, to constrict, not expand. That's why there are fewer jobs. Joining us now to analyze all of this, Tamara Draut, Vice President at Demos, a progressive think tank. And from Washington, Dr. Niall Gardner, Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative organization. So, Doctor, begin with you. The occupiers seem to believe that economies will improve if governments begin to regulate commerce. Where are they going wrong?
Yeah, I think these Occupy Wall Street protesters are absolutely dreaming here if they think that European-style big government solutions are actually going to work here in the United States. And we've seen across Europe over the course of the past few decades highly destructive policies. Very high taxation, overspending by governments, huge levels of borrowing, massive budget deficits, vast numbers of people out of work as a result. And I think that we're now seeing the collapse of the European project. We're seeing that very clearly in Greece. The last thing we need in the United States at this time are European-style big government solutions, which I think the vast majority of Americans clearly reject. And President Obama, who I think is a quintessentially European-style politician, has been trying to implement some of these European policies here in America, and to disastrous effect. So these protesters, I think, are hugely misguided in their thinking. They're heavily influenced clearly by Marxist ideas, and now they're turning to violence. So these protesters really, I think, represent the far left here in the United States, and they're trying to, well, they're calling really for failed policies that have been tried and tested for many decades in Europe and have been absolutely disastrous.
Mr. Draut, how do you respond to that?
Well, I don't think it's right to paint as broad of a brush as we are, that Greece somehow symbolizes a failure of the European project, which I think is what he said. We're leaving out a lot of European states that right now have a lot lower levels of unemployment than the United States. Germany, which spends a lot more on social spending, the so-called welfare state, than Greece does. Sweden, the Netherlands, Belgium, all of these countries have lower rates of unemployment than the United States does today. Germany also has something going for it. It has an export surplus. Now, I know a lot of factory workers in this country that would love to have an export surplus. So
okay, but let's take it one by one.
There are things we can learn here. It's
in
not
Germany,
fair.
They've cut back the entitlement spending, as you know, all right? They've really brought it down to a level where they have a surplus, and they are the strongest economy in Europe. But Greece is totally out of control. In the last 2 years, Greece has run up a $94 billion deficit, okay, by social spending, entitlement spending. It is a socialistic state. And that has happened in Italy, it had happened in Portugal, it's happened in Spain. So what I don't understand, what Dr. Gardner doesn't understand, and the protesters obviously don't understand, is if you allow the government to run the economy, as it does in Greece and the others I mentioned, it is a disaster. So why don't the occupiers get that and go into the free marketplace more?
So here's some differences between Germany and Greece. Now, one is that Germany doesn't have a problem taxing millionaires. They actually don't run big deficits.
What is the tax on millionaires
They
there?
do not run big deficits there.
What is the tax on millionaires in Germany?
I'm not sure. I can tell you it's higher, but
okay, I don't think it's any higher than it is here.
They don't run deficits, to your point, and there's a reason. And they spend a lot more than we do on social spending. They finance their social spending.
You're distorting it
with taxes.
With all due respect. They don't have any defense budget at all, none, zero. Okay, they don't protect themselves. We protect them. So you can't really compare that. Now, Dr. Gardner, Tamara's point is that if you run a government efficiently, as Germany does, that you can have both entitlement spending at a fairly comfortable level for those who need it, and a decent economy. Is she right?
No, I don't think she is, and she's trying to argue that all is well in Europe outside Greece. That's simply preposterous, actually. There are widespread economic problems across the European Union. You could have the collapse of several major economies in Europe in the next year or so. That includes Spain, Italy, Portugal, several other economies as well. In Germany, 70% of the public now has no faith in the European single currency. There is widespread disillusionment with the entire political project, the process of economic and political centralization.
Ms. Draut the last word here. Look, what perplexes me about this is that you know you know that Greece and Italy and Spain and Portugal and Great Britain to some extent got in trouble because they simply spent too much on social justice. Everybody knows that. I'll give it a last word.
What I know is they got into trouble when our deregulated financial markets caused a banking crisis that impacted the entire globe.
You can't run deficits like Greece does, $98 billion in 2 years, and expect to survive. You can't. It has nothing to do with the financial markets. This is what they're spending.
They weren't having a problem until we had a complete financial
They weren't
collapse.
having a problem until they couldn't pay their debts based on this. All right. Mr. Draut, thank you very much. Doctor, as always, we appreciate it. Next on the Rundown, Laura Ingraham on